I really believe this. He was lured to the dark side. It's a load of crap. I think Roger was born on the dark side.
He was the darkness.
He was the darkness. Yeah, he truly was.
It's a homicide on CCTV.
3 men were seen entering a storage facility. Only 2 came out alive.
2 ex-cops with murder on their minds.
It takes your breath away.
And the wannabe gangster.
Jamie Gow told his friends he was going to make a lot of money.
Investigative crime reporter Adam Shand follows the damning trail of evidence.
What was the message to you, do you think?
That he would like to see me dead.
And uncovers the secrets of storage unit 803.
You got 2 people, a dead body, and each is saying the other did it.
This is Rent a Space self-storage in Padstow in southwest Sydney. On Tuesday, May 20, 2014, a young man was murdered in cold blood inside this storage unit. The planning and the aftermath of the crime were captured in minute detail on CCTV. And from these images, New South Wales Police would painstakingly uncover what took place here and bring the killers to justice.
5 days after the murder, New South Wales Police took the unusual step of calling a press conference to say they feared a 20-year-old university student had been kidnapped. His name was Jamie Gow.
I think there are people who must know what's happened to Jamie. It's possible that Mr. Gow was getting himself into some kind of trouble and indeed may have been getting himself in over his head.
Jamie Gow seemed like an average Australian. He was studying for a business degree. He lived with his family in a comfortable suburban home and enjoyed an active social life. But beneath the surface, he harboured dreams of being a gangster.
I actually was working that Sunday when he went missing. And it was strange. They had this big press conference saying a young guy had disappeared and had been kidnapped, and they were looking for information.
Mark Morrie had been a crime reporter in Sydney for more than 30 years, long enough to know when the cops are holding something back. And he was right. In the days before the press conference, police had been gathering evidence that Gow had in fact been murdered. Jamie Gow was last seen on Tuesday, May 20. The next day, Gow's lawyer reported him missing, and Gow's friends told police Jamie had been bragging about a new connection. Former New South Wales detective Glenn McNamara. Police swung into action and collected CCTV footage that showed Gow meeting McNamara numerous times. More footage showed Gow getting into McNamara's car on the day of his disappearance. Then, early on Saturday the 24th, police secretly seized McNamara's car. Inside, 2.8 kilos of ice with a street value of $700,000. That night, police arrested Glenn McNamara.
Glenn McNamara portrayed himself as a crusader against drugs and police corruption in 2 modest-selling books. In 2014, McNamara was going through a messy divorce and was working as a private investigator. That's how he met Jamie Gow. Both were working for a solicitor, acting for one of Gow's mates who was facing a drugs charge. McNamara was the PI and Gow was the Cantonese interpreter for his friend.
By the time police arrested McNamara, they had CCTV footage showing what happened after he picked up Gow in his car. They drove to a nearby storage facility and McNamara and Gow entered Unit 8:03. Moments later, police were intrigued to see another man making his way towards the storage unit. A man with a very distinctive walk.
Sunday night, I get a phone call. Miranda Devine had heard, a colleague, a wild rumour that Roger Rogerson was wanted for murder.
Rogerson's career in the New South Wales Police Force is steeped in infamy. At one time, he was the most decorated officer of his generation.
I really, really loved the job. And look, you don't end up with 13 or 14 commendations. You don't end up winning the Peter Mitchell Award by sitting on your fucking ass. I mean, I got it from hard yakka. You know, I was a successful detective.
Despite his achievements, he left the job in disgrace after killing 2 suspects in dubious circumstances. He has since done time for dishonesty and perverting the course of justice, as well as an alleged involvement in bribery, assault, and drug dealing. With his name now connected to the murder of Jamie Gow, police raided Rogerson's home late Sunday night.
Well, I'm Paul Kenny. I was Roger's solicitor from around about the year 2000 up until about 2015.
Paul Kenny took a phone call during the raid. It was Rogerson's wife, Anne, on the line.
I asked to speak to the officer in charge. There was a Detective Inspector, Mick Shee. Mick came onto the phone. I was asking what's going on, what are you looking for? I didn't know where Roger was. He eventually told me it was something along the lines of a kidnapping. I said, kidnapping? Like, kidnapping who? What's going on here? What's this all about? But he just wouldn't tell me.
Police were looking for Rogerson in Sydney, but he'd flown to Brisbane, where he was staying with a former bodyguard, Mark Dixon, known as the Hammer.
I was running a boxing gym in Redcliffe at the time, and we were having inter-club fights just on a Sunday afternoon, and I invited Roger up as a draw card. Get the crowd there and, you know, they could meet him, he could sell some books, things like that. He'd been up there since Thursday, I think, or Friday, staying at my uncle's place up the road. Paid for him to come up. He was going to fly home on the Tuesday. He did receive a phone call that night. We were sitting back at my uncle's place after the fights, and we were sitting out under the bunga tree of knowledge, as he calls it, having a few drinks, and he took a phone call and his vibe changed. He said, I'm going to bed. I said, see you in the morning. He went to sleep. He wasn't there at 6 o'clock in the morning. He was gone.
We're going to take your live shots now.
Coming up,
We believe this is his lawyer.
Roger Rogerson, arrested live on TV.
Mr. Rogerson, do you maintain your innocence, sir?
We're back to the Gestapo days now. I've got a very bad hip and I've got a knee.
Did you know Jamie Gow?
Jamie Gow was a 20-year-old university student with a sideline dealing drugs. It was a short career that ended badly. 6 days after he disappeared, Gow's family awoke to breaking news.
Just after dawn, off Cronulla, a body wrapped in a blue tarp floating on the ocean surface, believed to be that of missing uni student Jamie Gow.
Gow was shot twice in the chest, near a tattoo that read, "Every saint has a past and every sinner has a future." Gow had dreamed of becoming a big-time gangster, and he thought that doing a drug deal with an ex-cop like Glenn McNamara would be his moment to strike it rich. McNamara had already been arrested the previous day, and now police were after Rogerson.
When I found out that Glenn McNamara had been charged with murder, They wanted to get Roger back. So I just said, you know, I'll get him back here. Just leave it at that. So we just made some sort of tentative arrangement. I'd just bring him just into the Sydney Police Centre because that's closer to Central Court because I thought that's where he'd be going. And that was the arrangement.
But it didn't quite play out like that. At the request of his lawyer, Rogerson had driven down from Brisbane on Monday and headed straight home, where he was greeted by news crews who'd camped out in anticipation. As dawn broke the next day, it became a nationwide media event.
We're going to take your live shots now. We believe this is his lawyer.
I've never seen anything like it. There's that many media people and media vehicles coming, like all the way up his street. I was thinking, you know, what's going on here? You know, the whole thing was farcical. This is a very serious situation. It should be treated very seriously and not like some idiot situation like an A.J. Simpson situation.
Rogerson arrived early this morning under the cover of darkness. He stayed holed up inside, skulking behind closed curtains.
So I just went in and saw Roger just in his little home office and we just started having a legal conference.
What was his demeanour?
Well, he was just sitting there taking it in. We're just having a chat and next thing, police turn up banging on the door.
And?
They went into Roger's little office room and Roger's just sitting there. They told him he's under arrest and you saw the footage outside the place. It was ridiculous.
Just a bit of space, come on.
Roger Caleb Rogerson under arrest.
Mr. Rogerson, do you maintain your innocence, sir?
We're back to the Gestapo days now.
In custody over a uni student's murder. Bundled into a police car, he was smiling, but he was still complaining.
I've got a very bad hip and I've got a knee. I'm saying nothing at this point.
Did you know Jamie Gow?
So what was Rogerson's connection to McNamara? They hadn't worked together in the force and nor were they friends, but they did share a sketchy reputation amongst their former police colleagues. What about McNamara? What do you know of him?
You know, he supposedly turned whistleblower up at the Cross. He was as dirty as everybody, obviously. And about 4 weeks before the murder, Roger said, I'm working with this guy, Glenn McNamara, you've got to come and meet him. And I never did. All I know is that other people kept saying to Roger, what are you doing with this guy? And Roger said, oh, mate, you know, you've got to give him a chance, you know.
Your view is McNamara is not a person of credit.
Oh, that's correct.
Former Assistant Commissioner Clive Small shares a dim view of McNamara.
McNamara was considering writing a book, as was Rogerson, and he met up with Jamie Gow. During that time, he also heard about the fact that Gow had possession of drugs. Basically, he put the word on Gow to buy drugs, and then he went and got Rogerson involved. Both McNamara and Rogerson were looking for money, and they agreed to buy, I think it was about 3 kilos off Gow.
Gow was studying business at university, but it seems his real ambition was to be a gangster. Gow told friends that the drug deal with McNamara was his chance to strike it rich and to forge an alliance with the triads in Hong Kong.
Michael, great to see you.
Thank you.
We asked Michael Drury, a former undercover cop, to take a look at the footage that led to the arrest of McNamara and Rogerson, starting with the meeting between Gow and McNamara on May 19. This was the last of 27 such encounters. Within 18 hours, Gow would be dead.
The Meridian Hotel in Hurstville. What are they doing here, Mick?
We know that as an excited 20-year-old, he told his friends he was going to do this major business deal and make a lot of money. And he was dealing with a former police officer. He could trust this guy. McNamara had credibility in the mind of Gow to do the business. But Gow needed to have credibility with the Chinese triads to give him so much of the drug. This was not a nickel and dime deal.
Rogerson didn't attend any of the meetings with Gow, and on the day of the murder, CCTV captures McNamara's car driving to a meeting with Gow and his two associates. But someone else is watching as McNamara and Gow drive off to do the deal. Moments after the pair leave, a silver station wagon pulls out of a nearby car park. The driver is Roger Rogerson.
So now we have two cars coming towards the storage facility here in Padstow, a few minutes away from the collection point. There are CCTV cameras that cover all the alleyways between the storage units. And there's another camera that captures vehicles on arrival, where they have to punch in their access code to enter the facility. So at this point, Gow is not concerned at all about what's going on. He thinks he's part of a deal going down.
Oh, correct. He knew McNamara was a former police officer. So this is all part of the make-believe clandestine or secretive actions of this group. In the mind of Jamie Gow, it also includes him.
This is McNamara's vehicle. What's he doing there? He's pulling up outside, seemingly so he gets a direct line into the shed. He gets out. Just see Gow slip in from the back seat into the storage shed.
Yes, done very quickly for privacy, to give it that air of clandestine behaviour.
So we go on, and there's the silver station wagon. And who gets out of it? A man with a very distinctive gait, Michael, someone you know.
Yes, an associate from many years ago. Not a friendly associate, Mr. Roger Rogerson.
So he waddles over like the penguin.
Can you see the casual way that he comes up to the crime scene? What you've got to remember is you've got a man in Rogerson who's just about to become involved in the murder of an individual. It takes your breath away.
Next.
And I brought it up and I fired one shot.
Was Rogerson ever a good cop?
Fairly quickly after that, the second shot.
Or was he just born bad?
Did you think you were about to die?
That night, yes.
I suppose if Roger had his time again, I'd probably do exactly the same thing. I'd probably do exactly the same thing again, but maybe I'd be a little bit more careful.
When I met Rogerson, he seemed to prefer the company of villains to police. Where once he'd epitomised the idea of rough justice on the streets, in later years he seemed more interested in money than anything else. He was so hungry for cash, I heard he once offered his services as a hitman during Melbourne's gangland wars. At the same time, he was telling stories on the comedy circuit about how he cleaned up the mean streets of Sydney.
In fact, I had 28 years in the cops before they caught up with me. I was having a good time.
So, who was the real Roger?
Initially, I thought that Rogerson was a dirty Harry that had gone too far. You know, he shot bad guys, might have even set them up, but that was the way he was trained. And then after the Jamie Gow murder, I was then given a bit of time to really dig around Roger. And I really believe he was lured to the dark side. It's a load of crap. I think Roger was born on the dark side, and he saw the police force as the way that he could use that for what he wanted to do.
He was the darkness.
He was the darkness. Yeah, he truly was.
Former New South Wales Assistant Police Commissioner Clive Small thinks the rot set in when Rogerson arrested career criminal Nettie Smith in 1976. The crim and the cop became firm friends.
He was steered away from robberies and towards the drug trade. And Nettie Smith went in it with a fervour with a lot of people in the drug trade knowing that he was supported by Rogerson.
And ultimately, he told tales out of school about Roger.
Absolutely. Probably the most notable incident was the case of Warren Lanfranchi.
On June 27, 1981, Nettie Smith brought drug dealer Warren Lanfranchi to this lane in Sydney's Chippendale to meet Roger Rogerson. Smith later claimed that Lanfranchi wanted to negotiate a secret payment to Rogerson to avoid being charged over a drug matter. Rogerson claimed that Lanfranchi was robbing banks.
And because at that point of time, he then suddenly just backed around and pulled this gun out from these very tight trousers. And as he was bringing it up, I realised this bloke's going to shoot me.
He didn't bring Lanfranchi in, he shot him dead on this street.
So I reached behind for my gun, and because I didn't mess around, and I brought it up and I fired one shot, and then fairly quickly after that, the second shot.
Two shots in quick succession, the classic double tap that police recruits learn in firearms training. No action was brought against Rogerson, and he was commended for bravery, despite claims by Lanfranchi's girlfriend, Sally Ann Huckstep, that Lanfranchi had $10,000 down his pants and not a gun.
How do you know, Sally, that he didn't have a gun in the car, that he didn't pick it up on the path as he walked out, that he didn't have it planted somewhere?
Because he left the gun at home and I had the gun.
Rogerson has never wavered from his claim that he acted in self-defence. In 1986, the body of Sally Ann Huckstep was found in a shallow pond in Sydney's Centennial Park. Rogerson's partner in crime, Nettie Smith, was recorded confessing to her murder on the orders of Rogerson. Although Smith was acquitted and Rogerson was never charged, he found himself tainted from that time on. The highest profile detective in New South Wales was now damaged goods.
Of course, back in 1984, you were the target of another murder conspiracy in which Rogerson was involved.
Yes, I remember that night.
Detective Mick Drury had been washing up in the kitchen of his Chatswood home when the gunman fired twice at close range through the window. He was rushed to hospital in a critical condition.
Right. You also investigated the shooting of police officer Michael Drury.
Well, again, Rogerson played a significant role in that. Alan Williams, a Melbourne criminal, had been buying drugs off Nettie Smith. He'd also been selling some of those drugs in Melbourne and also some back into Sydney. Williams was approached by Michael Drury, who was an undercover officer, and when he sold the drugs to Drury, he was arrested and charged.
At that time, Williams was one of the biggest heroin dealers in Melbourne, and he didn't want to go to jail, so he attempted to buy his way out.
The decision was made to approach Rogerson to see if he could bribe Drury. Alan Williams put up about $100,000. Drury knocked the offer back. Rogerson came back and told them that he couldn't be bribed. They'd have to look for another alternative. The alternative, they thought, was to kill him.
You know, it's very vivid. I remember it very vivid, but...
Two shots?
Yes.
Did you know you'd been shot, or did you just...
Well, at first I think I went into a state of semi-shock, and I'd been thrown about 10 feet plus across the room up against the wall. And I remember crawling up from the floor and I could see the blood on the wall behind me.
Did you think you were about to die?
That night, yes.
Even though the drug dealer Williams confessed to the attempted bribe and claimed Rogerson was involved, Rogerson was acquitted of conspiring to kill Drury.
Well, at one stage that things were going the other way, but fortunately, as I said, justice prevailed and I've been acquitted.
Drury has always publicly maintained that hired hitman Chris Rent-A-Kill Flannery pulled the trigger. But now he's not so sure.
Was it?
Well,
was it?
Because the suggestion by some is that the grouping of the shots suggested a policeman.
Double tap? Yes. Yes.
I used to see Roger quite a lot. And I remember bringing up Drury, you know, on a drinking session. And that was the time he just looked at me. It was like, I just froze. I was like, don't bring it up. The look he gave me then just sent chills down me.
Does that colour your views about Rogerson at all?
No. It has put me on a path of almost 40 years of educational development, understanding these people as to why they do this type of thing and how they live with themselves. The ability to show absolutely no remorse towards the family of this young boy that they've murdered. Absolutely no remorse whatsoever.
It's that characteristic double tap of the police marksman that points to Rogerson as Mick Drury's would-be assassin. It was the same style that was apparent in the shooting of Jamie Gow. 2 rounds fired in quick succession. There were 2 ex-policemen in that storage shed when Jamie Gow was shot. Which one pulled the trigger? Was it Rogerson or was it McNamara?
Did you kill Jamie Gow?
Solicitor, I'm saying nothing.
Roger Rogerson and Glenn McNamara were both arrested and charged with Jamie Gow's murder in May 2014. They spent the next 52 days sharing a cell in Sydney's Silverwater jail. Both were on the scene when Jamie Gow was shot dead, but only they knew who pulled the trigger, and Roger Rogerson was determined to control how that story was told.
I'm Charles Waterstreet. I'm a barrister at law, and I've been practising, although not at the moment, for 45 years.
Charles Waterstreet was Glenn McNamara's barrister.
I asked the warden to separate them because I thought that Mr. Rogerson may have been influencing Mr. McNamara unduly, and so Mr. Rogerson was so arrogant about his control over Mr. McNamara that he hand-wrote my opening to the jury, that what I should say on behalf of Mr. McNamara, and it was in handwriting and about 20 pages long.
This is what Rogerson wanted the jury to believe. He came to Storage Unit 803 for innocent purposes. He told his wife from jail that he only entered to see what was happening and to offer a bit of fatherly advice to McNamara. Rogerson was concerned that McNamara had gotten mixed up with Gow. As the door was raised, Roger said he saw McNamara as white as a ghost and Jamie Gow, who lay dead on the floor.
In the World, according to Rogerson, he said McNamara claimed that Gow pulled a gun on him and a struggle had followed. McNamara then said that in the middle of the struggle, he was able to grab hold of Gow's hand and twisted the gun around. It went off twice. Gow shot himself in the chest.
So that's Rogerson's version. Gow manages to shoot himself twice in the struggle before Rogerson even enters the shed. McNamara, when asked for his recollection, gave a completely different account.
In McNamara's version, he was inside the shed with Gow, waiting for Rogerson to arrive to do the drug deal. Rogerson lifted the door, entered the shed, produced a gun, pointed it at Gow and shot him twice. Rogerson then turned the gun on McNamara and said,
"I'm going to kill you if you talk, and think of your lovely daughters." And that phrase, "think of your lovely daughters," was a phrase that he often used as a veiled threat should McNamara, stray from the handwritten opening that he had prepared so carefully for me.
So there were two very different versions of what went on inside Storage Unit 803. But here's a fact. After the shooting, gunshot residue was found on Rogerson's clothes, including inside his trouser pocket, which suggests that he'd very recently fired a gun. McNamara also claimed that Rogerson had threatened him. But let's see what the video evidence suggests.
On a number of occasions, the video clearly shows leading up to the murder and post the murder, Mr. McNamara is totally involved and extremely relaxed.
Minutes after Gow was shot dead without warning, as McNamara claims, one moment is particularly damning.
So now McNamara comes out and gets the surfboard cover.
The surfboard cover McNamara collected from home. It belongs to his daughter.
So one would suspect that that surfboard cover was there to put the body in. There was no surfboard inside it.
Yes, it was part of the pre-murder planning.
After the murder, Rogerson and McNamara went back to McNamara's apartment. Here, we see them getting into the lift together with some beer. McNamara does not appear to be a man under duress.
They're a bit later filmed with a six-pack. It's pretty cold how we would have done it.
Next, two killers, one dead body, and the cutthroat defence.
They're pointing at each other in the box, saying, "You did it, no, I did it, you did it, you did it."
The partnership between Rogerson and McNamara did not last long. By 2015, the killers were blaming each other. In a taped phone call to his daughter Lucy, McNamara said that he'd had no choice but to go along with Rogerson. Despite the damning video evidence, he was trying to reassure his daughter that he was no cold-blooded killer.
Didn't do a thing.
No. You protected your own life. That's not a crime.
Yeah, you're allowed to do that. You know, I'll beat it.
Yeah.
I'll beat it because we didn't do anything. You
Yeah,
know?
I know.
We didn't do anything.
McNamara is a desperate, desperate man, and his family, they're desperate. And they must be desperately wanting to believe that their father was lured into this by Rogerson. You know, no one wants to think that their father is that evil.
In March 2015, both accused men pleaded not guilty to the murder of Gow and not guilty to supplying 2.78 kilograms of ice. The CCTV appeared to show both men working together, yet their only hope at trial would be a cutthroat defence.
Cutthroat defence is where you've got two people, a dead body, and each is saying the other did it. So they're actually pointing at each other in the box, saying, "You did it, no, I did it, you did it, you did it, you did it." That's a cutthroat defence.
As a leading Sydney barrister, Charles Waterstreet is no stranger to high-profile cases.
This was one case, though, that Charles Waterstreet would not be on for long.
The trial was only into its second day when it was abruptly aborted following Mr. Waterstreet's opening address.
In the address, Waterstreet had made a reference to Roger Rogerson killing 2 or 3 people when he was in the police force. Comments the judge believed had the potential to prejudice the jury. The judge also reacted negatively to a couple of social media posts by Waterstreet.
It's a great tragedy in Mr. McNamara's life, and I take some responsibility. And I was very confident that we would win with all this accumulated knowledge that went to water because it just couldn't be passed on.
McNamara scrambled to assemble a defence team to face a new trial without Waterstreet.
Roger Rogerson told the jury Gow had pulled a gun and wrestled with Glenn McNamara, accidentally shooting himself in the chest.
McNamara told the court it was Rogerson who shot Mr. Gow without warning. Rogerson alleged McNamara warned this place is going to be swarming with Chinese assassins.
Boasted of having shot people.
Rogerson denied he threatened McNamara's daughter Jessica. Both admitted they dragged the body out of the unit. The body ended up off the coast of Cronulla.
If they stuck together, they'd be all
Roger
right.
Rogerson and Glenn McNamara were once mates, but their falling out has been breathtaking.
After 6.5 days of deliberation, a jury today found Roger Rogerson and Glenn McNamara guilty of murdering student Jamie Gow 2 years ago.
Roger Rogerson was silent as a life sentence washed over the court. But his partner in crime, Glenn McNamara, tapped his chest and yelled, "Stay strong," as he was led away. His daughters Jessica and Lucy left without a word.
In the end, the cutthroat defence failed. The jury members did not need to determine who pulled the trigger, as they concluded the killers were part of a joint criminal enterprise, which the CCTV evidence proved in spades. But what of the victim in this story?
I feel for the family of Jamie Gow's family. Regardless of what was said about young Jamie, he's still a human being. He could have been any one of our sons or daughters.
In a statement, Gow's family said, "No 20-year-old deserves to lose their life over a stupid mistake. No matter what today's findings are, or the sentence that's given, it won't change the fact that Jamie remains absent from the lives of our family."
When Rogerson was found guilty, Mark Murray wrote a story detailing Rogerson's role in Gow's murder and his links to nearly a dozen unsolved murders.
I felt pretty sick when I had done it all. It was probably some of the best journalism I've ever done. But I didn't have this elated feeling. When I saw it, I'm just going, it was a bit of an empty feeling because I had got to like him. Not hugely, but I liked him.
Murray saw Rogerson again at his sentencing, where it was clear that Rogerson had read Murray's article.
He's seen me and he's just gone red and stood up and he literally went and started mouthing obscenity. And if you've seen a Roger look, it's not a pretty look, you know. And I've got to admit, I was a bit shaken.
What was the message to you, do you think?
It was that he would like to see me dead.
Next, gone fishing.
This is all part of the facade.
How the two killers tried to dispose of the body and failed.
Roger Rogerson and Glenn McNamara are both serving life sentences in Sydney's Long Bay Jail. Rogerson will probably die here. It would have been much harder for the police to convict the pair without a body. And were it not for the killer's own stupidity, Jamie Gow's corpse would never have been found floating in the waves off Cronulla.
On the morning after the murder, CCTV vision shows the two men in the lift at McNamara's apartment block, seemingly off on a fishing trip. In reality, they're about to dispose of Jamie Gow's body.
I can't see the bait. I can't see the box of sinkers and hooks. Well, this is all part of the facade.
But it's also where the plot begins to unravel, because anyone who knows Roger Rogerson will tell you that he always talks about how you dispose of bodies. You can't just drop a body over the side because it will rise up.
And yet, that's exactly what happened. After murdering Gow, they stored his body in a boat. Then, the next morning, they took the boat out to sea. McNamara said Rogerson was with him the whole time, threatening him with a gun. However, Rogerson maintained he stayed on dry land.
If Rogerson had been on the boat when the body was thrown overboard, he would have known that they had to put either a very heavy weight to the body so that when it was thrown overboard it would sink immediately, or that he had to cut the body open so there was no oxygen in there, causing the body to float. It leads me to believe that for whatever reason, McNamara might have taken out the body by himself.
So the next question that needs answering is, why did Rogerson and McNamara execute Jamie Gow? Intriguingly, Gow was known to have visited the Australian Crime Commission in the lead-up to his murder.
I have a theory, and I put it to a couple of the detectives. I said, so Roger's not an idiot. You don't just shoot a guy and steal, I think, $700,000 worth of drugs from the Chinese triads. And so I said, is it possible that that was sanctioned, that after Jamie Gow had been seen at the Crime Commission to get him killed, and the contract payment was you keep the drugs? And I've been told it's not a crazy theory.
If Maury is right, then Gow was not just a drug dealer, but a snitch for the Australian Crime Commission. And Roger had a green light from the triads to kill him. Let's go back to the moment that Gow arrived on the street to meet McNamara. There were two other people in the car with him. Could they be triad gang members? These two men leave and return 5 hours later to pick up his car, by which time Gow is dead.
It's now dark. Jamie Gow's vehicle that he drove there is still there on the corner. But now we see them walking up there, two young men. They have no drugs, no driver, obviously Chinese. Now they're driving off in his vehicle. What happens to these two characters?
They leave a couple of days later through Sydney International Airport for Asia, I believe Hong Kong. They're out of the country to get rid of the connections.
It's my belief that Roger Rogerson is the most evil man to ever wear a police badge in New South Wales. He relished that notoriety. He even called his autobiography The Dark Side. Here at Long Bay Jail, Roger is housed in the Kevin Waller unit for aged and frail prisoners. It's not because he's frail. It's because authorities fear that he will manipulate and exploit younger, more impressionable inmates to do his bidding.
I'm very ashamed to say that McNamara and Rogerson, they were members of the New South Wales Police Service. I have always been a member of the New South Wales Police Service. These two individuals, they betrayed the people of New South Wales. They betrayed every decent police officer in this state. And believe you me, there are some wonderful police officers in our community. And what these two did, only God can forgive them at the end of the day, because I can't.